What's up, guys? Welcome back to another little tutorial here. We're going to do quite an interesting one this week. We're going to model a little hatchet, and if I bring us across to 3D Studio Max, we're going to get a nice little look at what we're going to create here. So it's a very simple model. There's not a lot going on in terms of the number of parts, but we're doing some interesting things that we haven't done before on this series, and it will bring your modeling just up a little bit. If I go top level here, we will see the topology that we're going to create. We're getting these nice smooth rounded forms, and we're going to use a couple of tools and techniques we haven't used yet in order to create this shape. Now this is still fairly low poly. We could use this as a game asset, but you can see it's got some nice flow to it. It looks quite well. This is obviously one I prepared earlier, so we're going to go and we're going to start from scratch, and I'll show you how you model this. Then we will unwrap it using a pelt mapping technique, and we'll take any substance painter and we will add the textures to it. So the first thing that we want to do when we're creating something like this, either go online, download a photo of what you want to create, or have concept art prepared, reference images of what you want to create, whether you draw them yourself or someone on your video game production team produces the art for you. Have your reference imagery sitting waiting for you. I just downloaded this one off Google Images, and it was just one of the first ones that came up. You can adapt this, change the shape slightly however you want. You can even take this model we're going to create today and very, very easily adjust the size and the shape of these things. They take it from a small little hand hatchet into a full-sized Viking battle axe, or change it whatever way you want, create something a bit more unique, a bit more fantasy, whatever you want. But let's move this guy over to the side here, and just move him off that origin point. We can maybe leave him up there as a reference. I'll tell you what we can do. Rather than me flipping back and forth to this photo all the time, I'll just leave this guy here, and we'll use this actually as our reference. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just start with a box. I'm going to make one very small, tall box, and then I'm going to make another just slightly wider box, about that size for the head. And I'm going to move it up about there. So sizes aren't quite correct just yet, but we can play with it and fix it as we go. So this little box here, I'm going to change the color just so we can see easier what we've got. I'll make that a darker green as well. I'll maybe make that dark blue, looks nice. Just so we can see our lines a bit better. So I'm going to select you, just going to press F4 on my keyboard to bring up my guidelines here. Now, this is going to be our handle, so I'm going to go to my modify panel. I'm going to call this Hatchet, if I can spell Hatchet, C-H-E-T _ handle, and we'll call this Hatchet head _ head. Again, I like using underscores rather than spaces. Some software doesn't like spaces in your names, things like that. How are we going to do this? We're going to start with the handle. I'm going to give this, if I look over the top here, I want to give it, yours will probably start 1, 1, 1, like so. I want to give this a lot of height segments. Maybe about, yeah, that'll do. Maybe 10 or 11 height segments. Exact number doesn't really matter. It's just to give us something to manipulate later. Width segments, we're going to go, let me see, one width segment there. I'll go one length segment as well. That'll do. So one width, one breadth, but we've got a lot of height segments. Size-wise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this about 35. We'll just round that out to 35 centimeters. Width and height, I'll maybe make the width, just looking at it this way, we want it to be sort of tall and narrow, so I'm going to just drag that down a little bit. Maybe 1.9, we'll round that off to 2 centimeters. 2, and then we'll make the depth here maybe about 3.5. Now, if you're being really realistic, what we should probably do is measure this with a ruler. Actually get one of these real, but that should be grand for now. The head here, we'll probably adjust it as we go. We will make it a little bit narrower, and we're just going to eyeball this a little bit narrower about there, a little bit longer maybe on the long edge. Height, Height, we'll give the height about 6 centimeters. No, we'll go 7 centimeters, give a bit of chunk. There we go. And length, we will make this about, how's that looking? Proportion wise, how's that? That's not looking too bad compared to what we have over here. Again, we can compare this to a photo, or even if you have a reference imagery here, you could be modeling this off your reference imagery and put it in behind on a plane or whatever. But I'm just eyeballing this. So yeah, about 13 centimeters there, 14, we'll round that down to 13.5. Again, exact sizes don't matter. I just like to have precise numbers here. I'm just a puke that way. Okay, move that down. I want to just have a little bit of that handle appearing over the top. Just a very, very slight amount. Reason being, if you know how a hatchet is actually manufactured, there's always a wee tiny bit of the wood at the top. The head slips over that, and then you put a little wedge down here in the top to sort of fix it in place. That's how they're actually manufactured. So if we're going for accuracy, you just want a wee tiny bit of that handle available over the top. We also want another length segment here actually. Height, segment, width. So just put that one up. We'll have a wee line down the middle there. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to just pull this one back over a wee bit closer, just so I can see. I'm going to right click and I'm going to convert this to an editable poly. And what I'm also going to do, rather than being my perspective view, I'm going to hit, let me see, do I want right or left? Yeah, we'll go right. There we go. And this gives the orthographic view, so we're looking right on this here. And what I'm just going to do is, I'm going to go to my vertex mode, and we're just going to start grabbing some of these vertexes and just manually moving them and adjusting them so that I can get that curvy handle shape. And I might pull these out. I'll just be very, very slight adjustments. Just take these front ones. Don't forget to take all the way up to the top as well. Just thicken that out a wee bit. And then we're going to have a general pull back this way. Pull back like that. And that's our general shape there. So we can fine tune this a little bit. Let me see, pull you out just a tiny little bit. Maybe pull a couple of you in. And all we're doing is just trying to create that that curved shape. Now, if we notice, there's a little bit of a heft up at the back here. So we're kind of straight, but coming down. What we'll do is we'll pull these guys just out a little bit further. And we're quite close to the edge here now, but we can move the head afterwards. Just want to recreate this shape. And again, you'll be working off of photos, try and recreate that photo. You can see it's a wee bit thicker at the top here and gets thin around where your hand will be holding it down a bit here. And then a bit thicker again at the bottom. So let's just try and recreate that. We'll pull these guys out a bit, make that a bit thicker. Make that a bit thicker there. And maybe pull you out a bit more. And again, I'm just eyeballing it. I'm not doing anything too precise here. Just want to try and recreate that. And I'll maybe not get it exactly perfect, this one here. Every one of them is going to be unique. And that's okay, that's grand. I'll just pull maybe this out a wee bit more. Maybe this one. And just try and pull that out. Just try and keep an even kind of thickness down the middle here. What I could even do is just drag, just move these back into the middle, keep that more nice. What we don't want to have is we don't want to end up with something like that. We don't want to end up with those kind of shapes. We always want nice flowing lines. Remember, nice flowing lines is what we want. The other thing we want to do is, you'll notice I'm clicking and dragging around my shapes. What I don't want to do is just click on it and then move it, because then we're going to get something weird like this happening. And if we go back to perspective mode, reason why is because that's actually a 3D shape. We want to make sure that we always select all of these verts in a row here whenever we're moving them. So when we're selecting here, we always want to have all three of these. Just remember that we're clicking and dragging, we're not just clicking. So if I go right side again, that could probably do a little bit more work, but let me see, maybe pull this guy out a wee bit more. get that rounded shape. I think maybe what we'll do is we'll try and work on it, and we can come back to it and just edit it as we go if it needs changing anymore. So I'm just going to move it back in place on that head there just a little bit. Just give it a little bit of padding at the back here. Okay, next thing we need to do then, we've still got very horizontal lines here, but if we notice in this one, the lines kind of flow along with the shape. So I just want to say, grab these guys, just grab my rotate tool, and just, no, that's not working. Why are you not working? Grab these. Yeah, I want to grab just on that one axis, but it doesn't seem to want to give me that one axis. If I click and select, there we go. Just change it ever so slightly to follow that flow. And we're just being very kind of subtle. Oops, no, that's the wrong axis there. See, I'm kind of grabbing it and twisting it. Don't want to do that. I want to try and just make sure. You might want to select the other axis, then go back to this axis. There we go. And as we rotate these, we can maybe see the shape going a bit better. These ones will come down this way a little bit. This one will come this way. And then this bottom one will come this way. There we go. That's nicer looking now. And when it's like this, we can maybe actually go back and fix some of these as well. This one here is just looking a wee bit too coming in just the tiniest wee smidge too far. Barely perceptible, but it's just about there. And it's just about fine tuning. I could go back, I could fine tune this a bit more, but you know what, for the sake of brevity, we're going to call that done. We're going to say that's good. Okay, last wee thing I want to do then, come off there, I'll go back into my perspective mode, and what I want to do is just taper off this bottom corner a wee bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come up to my modeling tab here, my ribbon. So your screen might look like this, but we'll have modeling, freeform selection, etc. Click this little button here to show us our ribbon. Takes a little bit to show. And then we're going to go swift loop, and it's in the edit tab. If you get a smaller screen, you might see different icons, but the only one is called edit. We've got a little option here called swift loop, and we just want to hover this over one of these polygons here on the edge in order to add a little loop. And we're just going to click once, maybe about here, click once, that'll do, and it'll add an extra loop of geometry there. And then we'll deactivate swift loop by clicking on it again. And what we want to do is, we'll go kind of down sideways here, grab our vertex mode again, and just making sure I grab the correct axis. I just want to move this down a bit, like so, and this bottom one, just these three wee bottom vertexes here. Again, making sure I grab the right axes, just move them up like that, just to round off that corner nicely. And that's looking pretty good. Now, here is where the magic happens. So we've got this, it's still looking quite blocky, it's not looking very good so far. If we come back into our top mode, we're going to add a modifier here. And we're going to add a modifier called Turbosmooth. So what I want you to do is just grab your modifier list, scroll all the way down until we find this option called Turbosmooth. Now what Turbosmooth does is, well, if I click it, you'll see it doubles the geometry and it smooths it out. So look how smooth that looks there now. If I roll around, we can see we've got all these nice curves. Lovely. Look at that. Go back down to editable poly mode, and we'll see we've got the low poly version. We click on Turbo Smooth and it gives her high poly. Remember what's happening here, this is like a layer stack, kind of like Photoshop. We can go back to the editable poly and we can edit this a little bit and keep changing it, and then that will still apply to the Turbo Smooth above. So here's what we want to do. I want to just do a couple of wee edits in this, just to alter that shape a wee bit. especially if we go up to the top here. If we apply that Turbosmooth, look what's happening. It's kind of sinking down into the top there. So we have to do a couple of things just to fix this Turbosmooth. Just to show you what's actually happening with the Turbosmooth, explain what it is. If I go to my polygon mode, and I'm just going to select one of these polys, just this one here. So that's one single poly. If I activate Turbosmooth, you'll see what's happening. It's become 4 polys. It's been split in half lengthways, and it's been split in half heightways. And then, basically, the curve between the 2 polys has been evened out. So it gives us that smoother curve. We've effectively multiplied the number of polys in this by 4. What we can do is, here we have iterations. We can increase that again, and that will further divide it into 4. So instead of 1 polygon, it first divides it into 4, then it divides it into 16. We can do that again, got loads more. But for a game asset, we're getting up way too high a poly count here. I'm happy enough for a game for this just to be 1 iteration of Turbosmooth. That'll be more than enough for decent resolution for a game. So we're going to leave that just so. We're going to come back to edit poly mode here now. And what I want to do is, I just want to sort of refine this shape a wee bit. Looking the way it looks in this photo, I noticed the handle can be a wee bit tapered a bit better. Up here near the top, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to just go to my edge mode. And I'm going to select 1, 2, 3, 4. Just these little edges here. It's not going to make a huge difference, but it's just a nice little subtle effect. I'm going to just move these in ever so slightly like that. And you can see even on the low poly version, it's kind of affecting the shape, making it that little bit more ergonomic, a little bit more like it's designed to be held in the human hand. And what I'll do as well is, I'll just grab my vertex mode now, and we've got a bit of a hard edge down here. So I'm just going to grab these two, and just move them in ever so slightly. There we go, just to soften that transition from curved back to solid. There we go. And then when we come out of there and we go back to Turbosmooth, it's just a very subtle difference, but the difference is there. It's very subtle, but just to show you the kind of control you can have over this Turbosmooth. Okay, a couple of other things we want to do. First of all, we want to fix this top here. We don't want that disappearing in. We want that to stay up the top here like so. How do we do that? So the Turbosmooth is kind of being applied evenly over everything and smoothing out everything, polishing off those edges. What we want to do is leave some of the edges untouched. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to select my edge mode, and I'm going to select with just control click all of these edges around the top. Just control click, select all of them, and I want to scroll down on my modifier panel here. In the edit edges section, down below extrude, chamfer, all those familiar ones, we've got a little box here called crease. And crease is a value between 0 and 1. It always defaults to 0, but what I want you to do is shoot that all the way up to number 1. And now when we reapply our Turbosmooth, look what happens. It's still dividing the geometry, it's still giving us the extra geometry, but it's keeping those edges nice and crisp. It's not letting them fold down and disappear into that. There's other methods we can use to do this. We can add extra edge loops and things, but I find crease to be a brilliant way of fixing these into position so that they're not affected by the Turbosmooth. And we can do a lot of powerful stuff with that. Really handy, really good for the keeping your geometry the way you want it. I find crease to be the best way to do this and keep your polygon count low. We just fix these edges. We basically say when you apply the Turbosmooth, don't bend these edges, don't curve these edges. You'll see that we're still from 1 polygon into 4 polygons. It's still doing that, but it's just keeping that nice sharp rim on top. Now, if I go down the bottom here, what I want to also do is just tighten up this bottom edge a wee bit. So I want to keep a kind of a nice sharp edge down here. Another thing that we can do to help keep our edges is if we go to Swift Loop and we create another edge very close to the first, and just click and place that there, and I'll deselect that. If we have 2 edges very close together, this will stop the curve from happening. If the Turbosmooth works by sort of averaging out the direction distance between two vertexes, if we have two that are really close together, that average between them is going to be really small, and it gives us very tight corners. So if I go here now, it just tightens out that corner a wee bit. Okay. Now, last thing we want to do on the handle, going back to our low poly mode, I want to put this little hole in the bottom here. Now, how do I want to do that? My shape's slightly different here. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to actually go back to my edit poly and just give myself a little bit more. Whoops. I'm going to go back into vertex mode. I'm going to go to my right mode here. Make sure I'm looking at it flat on. I'm just going to move these guys up a little bit. Just give myself a little bit more room here at the bottom. So it's changing the shape a wee bit, but I'm not too worried. That still looks pretty fine. Just so I've got a little bit more room here. And what I want to do, I'm going to go again back to perspective mode. I want to select this polygon and this polygon. And I want to go to the other side, select the two opposite it. Select those. And then I want to go back to my modifier panel, and I want to go to inset. And I want to click the little settings button beside it. The little setting button gives us these wee options here, and we can choose how big or how small we want that inset to be. I want that inset to come down quite small, about a centimetre. There we go. And you'll see what that has done is it's created a bit more geometry. I've given us a bit here that we can cut away and make our hole in the middle. So going to go back to edge mode, or sorry, vertex mode. I'm going to go back to my right viewpoint. And what I want to do now, just select these and move them all down into a rough little hexagon shape. And because we're clicking and dragging, what we do on one side will be happening to the other side as well. So just kind of eyeball these. Nice little hexagon shape like that. And what I'll maybe do as well, I'll just grab all of these and pull them a bit more centralized. Grab this one here, centralize it a bit. Keep those edges nice and flowing. I'll even just take these guys, move these up as well. That's lovely. And now what I'm going to do, go to my polygon mode, and that little hole in the middle there, I'm just going to select both of these and hit delete. I'm going to go back to my perspective mode, and I'm going to roll around. We should have the same thing on the other side. I'm going to delete that. And there we can see we have our little hole, but we can see inside the geometry. We don't want to leave that. So what we want to do now is go to our edge mode. We need to fill in these little gaps, and how we're going to do that, we're going to select that back edge and the close edge, and there's a little option here called bridge. Just click that, and that will add a polygon between them. And we just want to repeat that. Select the back, select the front, bridge. Select the back, select the front, bridge. Just repeat that the whole way around for all 6 of those faces. There are other ways that we can punch holes into our model. We can use what's called a boolean. We're going to look at that on the next model that we make. Bridge there. There we are, I've got that all filled. We'll go to do it next week if you're following my college classes. Or if you're looking online, it'll be probably one of the next ones in the game asset series. We'll look at booleans. But they tend to ruin your geometry a little bit. So I like to manually cut these holes in. We've got a wee bit of stuff happening here. We can see that poly has been folded a wee bit, but I'm not too worried about it. It's only ever so slight. When we put the textures on, we'll not even see that. So now I'm going to go back to my Turbosmooth, and you'll see we've got that hole and it's smoothing it out. The only problem is it's kind of sinking in quite deep here. Sunk in quite deep. Now, maybe if you're making a kind of a molded plastic handle, you could leave it like that. But what I want to do is have something that looks more like a wooden handle with a hole just drilled straight through it. So here's how we're going to create that. We are going to come back to our edit poly mode, and in my edge, I'm going to click this. I'm going to double click it. If you double click, it should go around that entire ring of that border. Might not work, and you'll just have to control click every edge individually. But to do that, and then once again go back to your little crease option here in the modifier panel. Again, just down below your extrude and your chamfer and all those common options. Put that crease up to 1, and then go back to Turbosmooth, and look at that. Perfect. Nice sharp edge there. And we'll just do the same on the other side. Go back to your edit poly, double click, get that whole wee border there, and crease. Go back up to Turbosmooth. Lovely. Cannot say fairer than that. That looks good. Again, you can tweak this, you can play with the shape of the handle, you can move these, the low poly version, move these around a little bit. What I might do here, just because I'm a perfectionist, is say take the likes of these ones and just move them more centralized. But again, that is literally me just being a bit too pernickety with everything. There we go, keep those nice edge flows. If I come to the top, I think that's looking good on the handle. I'm not going to do any more work to the handle, I'm going to leave it as is. Okay, now what about the axe head itself? We've kind of left it, P for perspective mode, we've kind of left it untouched until now. Let me see, how many head segments do I want here? Let me go back to this original one and see what I did. On the original one, I had 4. Okay, so we're going to go for 4 segments on this. Length segments 3, we'll turn that to 4. Okay, 4 is good. And we're just going to manipulate this into shape. The axe head is actually a lot simpler to make than the handle, so we'll blast through this quite quick. I'm just going to move this ever so slightly this way, and at this point we'll just right click, convert to editable poly. So again, we've got two segments on the top, 4 segments wide and 4 segments high. Do I have 4 segments? Maybe I only had 3 on this one. Only had 3 height segments on this one, but it makes no difference, it'll make no odds. Slightly higher poly count, but not so much that we can actually need to worry about it. Okay, what I'm going to do, this one, editable poly, go my vertex mode. I'm going to come up to the very top here, and I'm going to just move it in a little bit, and get my scale tool, and just scale that in a little bit there. Whoops. Just the slightest wee amount, just so it tapers around a little bit like we have here on this one. Then I'm going to select all of these, scale them in, and just these ones at the end, scale them in tight. That's looking good. Now I'm going to scale these in close enough so they're almost touching, but we're still going to have those little polygons there. It doesn't matter if the edge isn't perfectly sharp. Again, in game you're not going to notice that. But what I might do is I'll just pull these out ever so slightly. Just my move tool, just to give that axe head a little bit more shape. Just pull it out. There we go. Not bad. And what I want to do now, I just want to add this little bit of curve here to the axe. So I want to select here, select all of these, scale them up a little bit, just ever so slightly, and select these guys, same thing, scale them up a bit, ever so slightly. And then what I want to do to get that slight bit of curve on the front of the axe here, just select these guys and move them out, and select the very middle one here and move it out, just to very simply create that nice shape. There we go, that's very nice. Okay, what do I want to do now? That's a little bit chunkier than the other one, but it's okay, it's all good. Unless actually, do you know what, I'll maybe just again for the sake of being a perfectionist, I'll grab over the top here, make sure I get all of these all the way around. Or if you really want to be a perfectionist, we could just double click this whole ring. Just double click one, it'll select the whole ring. And again, just go my scale tool, scale this just the slightest wee bit narrower. Might give us a nicer shape. Again, personal preference, entirely up to you. Don't worry about it. There we go. So what we're going to do now, again, our good old friend that we were introduced to today, Turbosmooth. We're going to add a Turbosmooth to this guy and soften it out. So we can see there already, shape's not looking too hot. It's sort of doing that, sanding off all the corners, and we don't want that. So we're going to go back to our other good friend that we learned about today. We're going to go to our edge mode. I'm going to double click a few of these and select everything that I can. All the edges that I want to be hard. So basically everything on the back side here, that outer back edge, I've selected it, and I'm going to put the crease up all the way up to 1. Check my Turbosmooth, and there we're getting that nice sharp edge at the back. Let me see, we've still more to do. So I'm going to take all of these top edges now. Double click U, double click U, and I'll just select all the way across that top edge and all the way across that top edge. And we will crease this and see how we go on. We're getting there, we're getting closer to that shape that we want. We still have a little bit of something going wrong here at the top. Let's go back to the Turbosmooth, and all we have to do here is just don't forget to select these two little guys at the very top. Get that scale tool out of the way. Select these two at the very top, and don't forget to crease those as well. Crease those. Now we go to our Turbosmooth, and we'll see it keeps that tip nice and sharp. Keeps that tip where it's meant to be, where we want it, but also smooths everything out. I think that's looking very good now. We just need to repeat that process on the bottom. We'll go back to the bottom here. Double select, and by the way, just to show you, now we want this crease value to be all the way up to 1, but we can put that crease value to about 0.5 or 0.6 or whatever, and I'll add some effect to it, but not completely. We're still getting a wee tiny bit of roundness there. In fact, that can look quite nice as well. Actually, that's not too bad. About 0.7, add just a wee bit of roundness. Maybe at 100%, it's a wee bit too straight, a bit too rigid. But we set that down just slightly. You'll see we're getting the tiniest wee bit of curve in there. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't. Up to yourself. Go back to the edit. But I'm just going to set all of mine, all the crease all the way up to 1. There we go. And again, just don't forget we've got these two wee guys at the bottom here. These two wee edges. I think I moved that there, did I? There we go. Put the crease all the way up to 1. And look at that. We have a lovely axe head there now. The only other thing we might want to do, you might want to change the smoothing groups here. If we go to your edit poly, it's not vitally important. It's not going to make much of a difference. You might just want to give this wee section, I think I moved that there, did I? Just be very careful if you have the move tool selected. Yeah, it did actually. If you don't want to have the move tool selected and risk clicking something and accidentally moving it, click this little guy instead. It's just a select object, and that'll let you select without the risk of moving anything. So yeah, control click. You could put another smoothing group on this section here, or even just on this section here. It's up to yourself. And what we could also do now, I'm just thinking on it, is if we go to the side here, click and drag through. We'll select all these guys and just keep that flow going a wee bit. Make that flow a bit better. If you want, entirely optional. Okay, let me see how we're looking. That is looking pretty good. That axe is looking not too bad. We're nearly done. Last thing I want to do is, do you know what? I kind of like the shape of that one more. All we have to do then is just go to your bottom one. I could probably just scale that down just the tiniest wee amount, like so. Something like that. Just if you're looking at it and you're eyeballing it and the visuals aren't quite right, just go back to the original edit poly and everything will carry through to the Turbosmooth. It's all good. Yeah, so last thing I want to do is just add this little bit of string and this wee bead here down to the bottom. How we're going to do that, we are going to go to our primitives, and instead of box, sphere, cone, etc., we're going to click one tab over to shapes, and we're going to create a circle. So I'm just going to grab this little circle here. Now mine is coming out, you can see it's more like a tube. Yours will come out more like this. It will look just like a plain circle. And what I want to do is right click on that and convert to editable spline. And we'll convert to editable spline. If we scroll down here, we'll see we've got selection mode, we'll see we've got vertexes. All I want to do with this is I'm just going to grab these and pull it in. Grab this one and pull it in like so, make this kind of shape. And I'm actually just going to grab both of these, move it up, just to create this kind of bendy loop shape. You can see what's happening there. So now it's just a shape, it's just a path, it's not anything there. So what we want to do is scroll up to the very top of our modifier panel, into the wee rendering tab here, and at the top of that we have enable and renderer and enable and viewport, and that turns it from just being an invisible line into a chunky actual 3D shape. And we can change the thickness of this, slide it up and down like so. We can also change the number of sides it has, so we can add it more detail or less detail, all the way down to 4. For a game asset, you could probably get away with 4. I'll make mine 8. That should just be enough. And what we'll do is, that should just be the right thickness. You'll have to again eyeball it. We will go top level, and we will just move this. Actually, one wee thing we can do, nice wee tip to remember how to do. You look here, the pivot point is down here in the middle, it's floating out. If I was in game, I might want this to actually, where it's attached, sort of wiggle about as we're waving this hatchet about. And to do that, we would want to move the pivot point actually up here to this point. So here's what we're going to do. Pivot point is currently down here. I'm going to go to this third little tab here, the hierarchy tab. Click on that. Click on Effect Pivot Only, and then just move it towards the top here. It should be around about the middle. That's perfectly fine. Just put it in there, and then deselect Effect Pivot Only. So now the pivot point for that is here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it, the whole object. Oh, we're a bit off kilter there. Just adjust it so it's in the middle of the thing, and adjust it so it's going through the hole. There we go, like so. Because that pivot point is here, if I get my rotation tool, I can now rotate that around like that. So again, imagine that's in game, we're running, and the axe is in our hand, and that little bit of string can just be wiggling. We can animate that, do whatever we want once we get into Unreal. And just to add an extra wee tiny bit of detail, this little loop here, this little polament looking thing, all this is, if we go back to the create panel, we have a shape called a torus. We could in fact create another one of these splines, but a torus is just a donut shape basically. I'm going to click that out, and we can make it really chunky, really thin. There we go. Let me move this over here. Where are we at? There we are, we're close enough now. And again, we're just eyeballing here. So I want, go to my modifier panel. Radius 1 does not need to be that big at all. Radius 2, the thickness of the tube, again, not that thick. And rotate you around about 90 degrees this way. Doesn't have to be perfect, we'll just eyeball it. See, where are you? Whoops. That's about right there. And again, I'm just eyeballing. There we are, that's not too bad. Yeah. Just as if that's a little metal ring or something there. I'll just make it a wee tiny bit bigger, a wee tiny bit chunkier so we can see it. And again, I'm just eyeballing it. If I see something, I'm not going to any precise sizes here. Just if I see something and I don't like it, just go back and eyeball it. Now, this little piece of string here, there's a couple of things we need to do. if we look at it, we can see that it's got these very harsh kind of lines on it. We want to apply a smoothing group to it. The other thing we want to do is we want to right click and convert this to an editable poly. We want to turn it from a spline into a poly. Do that because if we were to export this into Substance Painter now or into our game engine, the game engine would still see that as just a spline and it'd just be an invisible line. So we're rendering it in 3D Studio Max, but it's still a spline. And that wouldn't pick up in the other software. So we have to convert it to an editable poly, like so. And then what we can do is we can select all of these faces, or go into polygon mode, select everything. And what we'll do is, just one final thing, we will clear the existing smoothing groups. You can see there's 2 smoothing groups applied to it already here. We'll just clear them off it and just add one. Doesn't matter which one, any random smoothing group at all will do. And we deselect that, turn off F4, we'll see it looks a lot smoother, like a piece of rope, like a piece of string. Okay, go to top level. That's model done. Happy days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this, I'm going to halt this video here, and we'll come back in part 2. We'll finish up, we'll apply a material to it, we'll unwrap it, and that'll be it ready to go to Substance Painter. So thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed that. Turbosmooth and Crease are our 2 main things that we've learned there. Really, really useful. If you're making armor, if you're making anything curved and organic, Turbosmooth is the way to go. And we'll get to unwrapping this in the next video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you very, very soon.